Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wench Bench, where friends sit and talk about fabulous fictional females and how their stories have influenced us throughout our lives. My name is Fonda.
And my name is Alison.
Today, Alison is going to be talking about the pro.
Yes.
I say that with a question mark because I've heard Alison talk about this character before, but I'm still very unfamiliar with her and the fictional world she encompasses.
Well, there's not much to know because it's a single one-shot comic book, basically. It's a small little trade paperback that covers one story. They released an extra bonus story as well, but that's it. There's nothing else in this world or in this universe, but I love her so much. I actually cosplayed as the pro at the last convention I went to before the COVID. I went to Calgary Fan Expo, and I cosplayed as the pro in my time to meet Amanda Connor, who is the artist on the books. And she is also who I'm going to be talking a little bit about today because she's done a lot, and we'll get into it.
Ooh, okay, so quickly, not just us talking about fabulous fictional females, but us also talking about a real person.
A real person, yes. One of those examples of diversity behind creation that I'm always ranting about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to start with just some basics about the pro.
Okay.
As I mentioned, it is a one-shot comic book. It was written by Garth Ennis, who also wrote Preacher and The Boys, which is another comic that's fairly popular.
Is The Boys Amazon Prime show?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I'm up to speed on franchises.
It is also an Amazon Prime show. And Preacher is also a TV show. So.
Oh. That one I did not know.
Yeah. And the pencils and lettering was all done by Amanda Connor. And inks by Jimmy Palmiotti.
Oh.
And it was originally published by Image Comics in 2002. Now, Jimmy and Amanda are actually married. I am not sure if they were married at the time of this book, but they were definitely working together already. They might have already been married, but that's fact-checking that I didn't feel like doing. But they are still married now, and they're so cute. So the story follows an unnamed sex worker who was granted superpowers by an alien.
Okay.
Okay, you with me? It's complicated.
Quick question. I already have concerns. Granted superpowers by an alien. Mm-hmm. Was it like a weird chemical thing where like he adjusted
It was like
her human, or was it like alien that has magic and was doing it through magical means?
They don't super get into it. All that I know is that he like unlocked her potential and gave her superpowers.
Okay.
Which includes strength, super strength, flight,
average
superhero powers.
stuff.
Yeah, the usual array.
The huge.
The comic is incredibly vulgar, as you can probably guess, and very dirty, but it's super funny. It pokes fun at superhero comic stereotypes, which if you have read The Boys or have watched the show, you can tell that that's kind of something that Garth Ennis is pretty kind of famous for. I'd say he seems to just take the piss out of the ideas of superheroes and always being good people. And it to Have you not heard that saying before?
I've never heard that before. I'm good. Yeah. Keep going. Oh.
You all right?
I'm good. I just need water.
If you like vulgar and ridiculous stories, it's so small and it's so cheap. Pop down to your like local comic book store, pick it up. I've read it probably 20 times. It reads so quick and it's so funny. The art is amazing, which is part of the reason I wanted to talk about it. It's just Amanda Connor's artwork in it. It's just so funny. And it is truly a huge part of why I like the comic, because she isn't afraid of drawing characters in ugly and truthful ways. So the Pro has cellulite, like she slouches, she has horrible posture. At one point you see a picture of her picking a wedgie, and like it's just like she captures reality in like comic art that's still funny and a little over exaggerated and a little bit ridiculous, and it just makes it so much more entertaining to read.
And kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? More real?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it feels more like, oh yeah, I've seen.
Yeah.
I've accidentally caught someone picking a wedgie before, or I have bad posture, or like, yeah, that's cool.
There's a story about Amanda needing like having Polaroids of herself picking a wedgie to try and like get the position correct.
Oh, that's so funny. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Hey, if you can't find a reference, make your own. That's the artist's go-to.
Oh yeah, it's so handy now. You just take a picture of yourself with your cell phone and
doing the pose you're trying to draw. Yeah,
do whatever you need. Given the premise, it would have been really easy to make the Pro both sexy and hypersexualized, but she was drawn as like a real believable woman. You believe that this is like a woman that you have seen before, just tired and like worn out, and the world has just not been kind to this woman, and it makes her so much more entertaining to read about, and it tells so much of a story without needing backstory. Like you can look at her and know like, oh, that has been a rough life. Like immediately. Aww. You do not need. She's got huge bags under her eyes. Like, terrible makeup. This poor woman. There has been discussion of a Pro movie, which I think would be really funny, but nothing has come of it yet, which kind of makes me sad. I hope that since Garth Ennis is getting all this other TV stuff, maybe they can get that rolling again, because I think
like a Netflix movie or something.
I don't think Netflix would touch this, but maybe Prime would.
Prime, probably, most likely.
It would have to be R-rated, like hard.
Yeah,
R-rated.
Okay, fair.
Garth Ennis pitched it to Jimmy and Amanda like this, quote, "A superpowered prostitute with a lousy attitude. The perfect antidote to the nauseatingly sincere claptrap pumped out by the major publishers." That's a perfect summation of what the comic is. And at the time, because this came out in the early 2000s, as I said, pop culture shock content was on like a huge rise. And everything was about being the most outrageous, about doing the craziest things, showing like the most absurd or like R-rated stuff. Like it was just about gross out and shock, and how can I push that boundary? Like how can I push it off a cliff, basically?
Yeah.
And they pushed it as far as I think was possible in this comic. My husband, since he worked in a comic book shop, was actually told kind of a like a wives' tale about this comic, and how when it first came out, they would have to stop kids from looking at it because there's nudity in it and there's like sexual scenes depicted in it. And so they would have to stop like underage kids from looking at this comic because it was so ridiculous. And like the funny thing now reading it is it's not sexy nudity. At one point she's just wearing a pair of underwear, like no bras or anything else. And she wakes up and she hasn't realized she has powers yet. And she's completely slumped over, like arms hanging down by her sides, shoulders curled forward, just looking like so awful because her alarm just went off and she smashed the shit out of it with her super strength. And she just looks fucking miserable. But it's like weirdly real nudity versus sexualized nudity. Like when they're trying to put her...
Yeah, difference between a male gaze and a female gaze.
Yeah, and like they try and put her in her new superhero costume at one point, and like half her nipples sticking out because it doesn't fit right, and like it's bulging in all the wrong places. And it's just it's so funny. A quote from Amanda Connor about the Pro. "The Pro is my baby. She's one of the characters I had the most fun drawing. One of the many reasons that was because anyone who had illusions of me being just a Barbie artist was permanently shut up. Another reason was that I know exactly what spandex does to a body. All the riding up and popping out is something I've personally experienced and witnessed countless times at conventions. So I got to put all of that into play in that story."
Aww.
One of Amanda Connor's first regular jobs was drawing Barbie comics. And so it's very different because Barbie comics were very limiting. You had very few facial expressions you could do. The bodies always had to be the exact same. And if you look up any of Amanda Connor's art now, she is known for expressiveness. She is known for storytelling through the pictures. Like, you don't even need the words on some pages, just the way that she positions people's bodies and like has them moving. It's so dynamic and so interesting, and it does tell the story and it gets it across. So it's just wild that she came from like such restriction to having such freedom, and it's been a really interesting career arc for her, which we will get into a little bit later.
Okay.
So, back to the Pro.
Yes, take
the full
me.
synopsis.
Oh, okay.
Which is very long.
Oh. Okay. I'm here. Ready for it.
A sex worker is granted superpowers by a voyeuristic alien known as the Viewer. He wants to show that anyone can be a hero. She gets recruited by a team of heroes known as the League of Honor. It's really just an over-the-top parodies of the Justice League, which is easy pickings. And they try and teach her how to be a hero. She refuses to change her extremely crass personality and ends up corrupting their leader, the Saint. After some quick and crazy mishaps, she ends up saving the day by sacrificing herself and proving that anyone can be a hero.
How does she corrupt the titular saint?
So,
do they fuck Alison?
So the Saint is basically...
Is he a virgin?
Yes, probably. Most likely. So at some point in the movie, he...
You mean comic, not movie.
Or, yeah, sorry. At some point in the comic, he saves her baby. She's a single mom, and she had pissed off a guy, and he came and he was threatening her child, and the Saint showed up and helped her punch the jaw off of this man.
Nice.
Which is great. The Saint had not intended for that much violence to occur, but it did. Violence is a big thing in this comic as well.
Okay.
So afterwards, she wanted to thank him, and so she gave him a blowjob. And he's never had one before. And... Yeah, just wait, that's not even the best part. So, she, being a professional, was using a condom, but he, being a superhero, condom didn't really work, and so he yelled at her to move her head, and when he came, it was like a bullet, and it hit the wing off of a plane. And the plane started to crash.
Oh my god, what's that fucking Will Smith superhero movie?
Hancock?
Yeah!
The Pro is the female version of that. And so he has to go save the plane with his pants down. It's fine though.
Imagine being the press release that day.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And
Oh.
it's so funny.
Oh boy. Okay. I interrupted you telling the synopsis for this.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
That was the whole synopsis. I was done. She saves the world at the end.
Okay, awesome. Oh.
But we're gonna kind of do like a little time travel back in time for a couple standout moments that I have, which is basically just the whole comic. Just read it.
Could people find it online if they can't find a printed copy of it?
I imagine you could probably find it online. That's probably somewhere. There's tons of opportunities for that everywhere. So the reason this guy was in her house, the kind of setup of this villain, as it were, at the very beginning, before she has her superpowers, she is with a client, and he refuses to pay her for the services that they had agreed upon. Like, she's basically just says, like, go get my money. Like, I'm not leaving without it. And he pulls a gun on her. And it turns out, we find out later in the story, that he has done this, and worse, to multiple other sex workers. And when she has superpowers, she facilitates the revenge of all of the other sex workers upon this man.
Oh.
And it's a lot. And so she ruins his life.
Is he like a public figure too? Like, is he
No,
kind
he's
of
just
like...
a piece of trash. He's
Okay, just wasn't sure if it was like...
Yeah, he's just an asshole. And so then he comes and tries to kill her baby to seek revenge, and she punches his face off. Yeah. So it's a really, like, cute, like, not cute story, but it's a really interesting story of just, like, yeah, like, this character clearly has been dealing with these real life problems, but they found a way to make it fun, which was cool.
It's because that can probably... Sometimes things can get really heavy. Depending the topic. And it's nice when someone can still handle it, but make it in a way that it's not going to be too heavy on you as a reader or a viewer, because it can be a lot. Like, just a quick thing, I freaking love Jessica Jones a lot, the first season, but it was so heavy. I remember it would take me a bit to watch an episode after I just finished one, because I'd be like, oh, they did a great job, but oh, it was heavy. So it can be really nice on the flip side to kind of have something where they tackle certain subjects in a way that's more humorous.
Yeah.
And a little bit more, the word I'm going to use is lighthearted. I don't think that's the perfect word, but like it encompasses a space where it makes you a little bit more comfortable at the end of reading it, where you're like, okay, difficult subjects were tackled, but I don't feel like emotionally drained.
Yeah. 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 So it was really good in that way. Around the middle of the comic, I believe it's shortly after her first public mistake as a superhero. They got in a fight with a supervillain team, and she, I guess, took it too far. Because when she was fighting one of the female villains, after she beat her up, she pissed on her. All the take the piss stuff just coming right back. Yeah. And clearly that is not a good thing. And they were like in some like major government hall at the time.
Okay.
So when the League of Honor is trying to be like, you can't do this, all this stuff, she kind of goes on this tirade about how hypocritical it is. She's like, yeah, like, there are these horrible things happening around the world, and you guys are running around in costumes doing nothing about it. She's like, I was broke, like, I couldn't make any money. I had to turn to sex work to survive and to care for my child while still also having another job. And she's like, but you're not fixing any of that. And just kind of the inherent hypocritical nature of superhero comics that is usually just ignored because you gotta suspend some disbelief.
Yeah.
And so she's like, yeah, and then she does make a joke about how half the people in that government building have probably paid for that exact show before, implying that they're all perverts who like to watch women piss on each other.
Yeah.
And it's just, it was a really interesting, like, well thought out little argument where she's just like, yeah, like, where were you to help me before now? And now all of a sudden you're pretending like you're better than I am. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very fun.
So just a reminder, the pro doesn't have a name besides the pro?
She does not.
Okay.
She is unnamed. I'm not sure about the decision to do that. I don't know if it was. I assume it was intentional somehow, but I didn't read in my research why they decided not to name her.
Okay. Just wanted to double check.
Yep, just the pro. The last little standout moment is at the end when she gets a chance to fight with the League. Like, one last chance. After the incident with the peeing and after the incident with the blowjob, they basically want to kick her off the team. But a terrorist attack happens and they have to get called, and the Saint kind of argues that she should have one last chance. And they go in and they prove just how useless they as superheroes are in like a real situation. How when they're not just fighting supervillains, when they're actually fighting humans with guns, there was lots of death, lots of fuck-ups, lots of horrible things. And by the end of it, one guy had a bomb strapped to him and he had like a kill switch in his hand. And she ripped his arms off to save everybody, but she couldn't release his arms because she had to like hold on to the button, because if she let it go, everybody would die.
Yeah.
And like the last thing she basically said was like, don't let my kid become one of you. Because she knows when she takes this away and she lets it go, she's gonna die, and that's kind of the implication. And so she's just like, yeah, like, just please, like, her last kind of reasoning was like, please take care of my kid, but also I'm not gonna let hundreds of thousands of people die because of this bomb. So she did prove that anybody can be a superhero. And then she does accidentally fly directly towards the invisible spaceship of the viewer and probably blows him up too.
No! That's kind of funny.
It's good. And
that's kind of a funny little end.
Yeah, and believe it or not, there is more in this small comic. But I'm not gonna get into it because you should just go read it. It's funny.
I would like to, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's, like I said, it's very vulgar. It is X-rated for sure.
Okay.
But the art is so fun. The visual comedy is hilarious. Just to see her like costume, because it's like, it looks like a mishmash of a bunch of other people's costumes, which is exactly what it was in the comic, which is just like, oh, like this skirt from here, like this unitard from here, like this belt from here. And it just, it's horrible. It clashes, it's terrible, and I made it, and I wore the shit out of that costume. And the reason I like the pro is because, like, she was just, like, a very real character in such a not real world. She had, like, she kind of grounded everything. Like, when she's interacting with her child, she clearly loves him, but she's definitely, like, overworked, underpaid, super tired, and she's just like, God damn it, like, shut up, like, just eat. Eat and go to bed. I'm so tired. And it's just like, it was like, it wasn't showing like, oh, she can do everything. It's like, no, she needs help.
Yeah.
Like
like most human beings do.
Yeah, it's like she needed assistance. Like, so it very clearly showed that she was struggling to succeed, but that she was still a good person deep inside. She may not be the most proper person. She's definitely not the most stereotypically heroic. But at the end of the day, she does prove the point of the viewer that anybody can be a superhero. And you don't have to conform to other people's ideas. Like, she never gave up her swearing or her crassness or anything. She's just like, no, like, you're the ones who wanted me to be a part of your superhero team. Like, you came to me. I was fine. giving super quick hand jobs and making shit tons of money with my super speed. You could have left me alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like she just never stopped being herself throughout the comic. I just love it when a lady gets to be crass as hell. It's so good.
It is. And it's not, like, even though I don't view myself as a crass person, it's still just nice to see that other version of the word I'm going to use is role model, right? Like, there are going to be people who look up to those that are like, oh, intelligent and mature and independent. But people that are intelligent and mature, air quotes, can still be crass and vulgar. Like, they can still be a person outside of maybe what they have to showcase depending on what their career or something is. Yeah. And for her, she's just like, I'm going to be an authentic person.
Yep.
While being a superhero, because, hey, I need that in my life. Like, I don't want my kid probably thinking that, like, as soon as you get powerful or power in any form, you have to change yourself to match the other people that are fitting that sort of, like, clique, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like, there's not only one way to be a superhero.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which I think is a very fun trope that's kind of coming up a lot. I know there's another, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a new Netflix superhero TV series coming out, and it's just about people being like, I can't do anything right. If I don't save this person, other people die. If I do save this person, other people die. And, like, the media is always going to put me in a bad light no matter what I try to do. And it's kind of like, so why force yourself to try to be what they want if no matter what's going to happen, you're never going to be doing the right thing for the majority of people. Kind of like... I think of Bonnie Henry, who's currently she's helping British Columbia go through this pandemic. And I feel like you're going to agree with her or you're not. And no matter what choice she makes for the betterment of British Columbia's citizens, no one's going to be happy with her. Yeah. So, like, at the end of the day, that's like anybody in any job, like customer service. A customer's gonna come up to you in McDonald's and they're gonna be like, can I please have like XYZ with ribs? And someone's gonna be like, sorry, we don't have ribs right now. Mm-hmm. And that person's gonna be upset and you're not gonna please anybody. Like, when Alison and I worked at a movie theater, the amount of times people were not pleased
it was a lot
with popcorn was just...
Or even the movies. They'd sit through the entire movie and come out and ask for their fucking money back.
Yeah, and it's like you have the first 20 minutes to come back for a refund. Yeah. And then their complaint is like, well, I'm not going to know within the first 20 minutes if I like it or not. It's like, well, I'm sorry.
Too bad.
But it's like eating your whole meal at a restaurant and telling a poor waiter, hey, I hated this. Can I get it comped? And it's just like, I came and checked on you 8 times to ask how the food was, and now when I'm giving you the bill, you're telling me? Anyways, long rant. But I'm just trying to say, it's nice to see someone who acts like a person. Yeah. In the comic. That's really nice.
Yeah, and the comic's not going to be for everybody, and I completely get that.
Nothing ever is.
You definitely see that in the reviews if you read some people are like, they don't understand why so many people love it, but I think it's one of those things, either you love it and you really enjoy it, or it's not for you. It's pretty black and white of whether or not you're going to enjoy this. But, like, just, again, the biggest reason I like the Pro so much is just the way she's depicted and drawn, with her terrible posture, nip slips. She's got a cigarette. She smokes all the time. She just constantly looks tired, and I get that. Like, I love it. It's so good. Her boobs are kind of saggy. Like,
she's a person. an adult woman who's gone through having a kid. They're gonna have saggy boobs.
Yeah, like, she's got like, cellulite on her ass, and, like, it's just so real. And now we're gonna talk about Amanda Connor, the woman behind why I love The Pro so much. The biggest reason why I wanted to cover this is that I knew The Pro wasn't going to be long enough for me to do a whole episode, because it's a very thin comic. But it gives me a chance to talk about Amanda Connor, who is a comic book artist and writer who has done some characters that I am going to talk about in the future, and she has revolutionized them, and she's changed them in a way where I have been able to connect with them on a completely different level. And she's done a lot of stuff that I really love, and I will not have time to talk about how much I really love her in those things, because they're things like Power Girl and Harley Quinn, which are already going to be huge episodes. I don't also need to talk about how much I love the artist. I got to meet Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti in Calgary Fan Expo, and it was like so amazing. I talked to my husband about it for like days. It was like one of the best moments. It was so fun. We ended up showing up just as they were starting a panel. And so Nick and I come around the curtain in this panel, and they're all up on stage. And I think Jimmy sees me in the costume first, and he just starts like smacking Amanda, and then Amanda sees me and she fucking lights up, and she's just like, oh my god, it's The Pro. And I'm just like, oh, it was like the best cosplay moment of my entire life. Seeing like the creator just like immediately recognized me. And I spent so long on this costume. Like, I hand sewed it myself. The top is handmade, the skirt is handmade. Like, it's all hand sewn and constructed to not fit well.
Was it uncomfortable to walk around in, Alison?
It was pretty comfy, but it didn't look comfortable. Like, just the way that it, like...
Gotcha, okay.
But I had, like, fake cigarettes. I had just trashy blue makeup. It was so good. And then we got to go and meet her later at the table, and we took pictures with her, and she was just so nice. Fonda, I'm gonna get her to share a picture of me with the two of them in my The Pro costume when this episode comes out. And there's not a lot more that you can really say to somebody who you're like, your art has affected me on a like a fundamental level. Like, yeah,
like your work that you've put out.
Yeah, and she was happy that it worked that way, and like I was so happy to get to just like
tell her,
put effort in and show her how much her work mattered to me by like taking time on this costume, by putting it together. And we literally went to Calgary for her. Like, we had kind of joked about it because Jeff Goldblum was also in Calgary, and I love Jeff Goldblum so much. But, like, that wasn't enough to get me to drive from the Fraser Valley area to Calgary, but, like...
Yeah, it's one thing if we gotta go to Vancouver.
But then we saw that Amanda and Jimmy were gonna be there, and it had to happen. I had to see her. I just had to.
Aww.
And so we took that trip. And it was really fun. I had all of one person recognize my character's costume aside from Amanda. Which is fine.
That is okay. That's fine.
Yeah, like one person was like, oh, are you The Pro? And I'm like, yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to either cosplay as someone who gets cosplayed a lot, so people might not stop you unless they really like how you made your costume.
Mm-hmm.
Or dressing as something obscure enough that no one really knows what the fuck you are. You can just enjoy walking through the convention and not getting stopped constantly, and being able to make it to see the things that you want to.
Yeah.
So,
and well,
I'm sure.
I think you were with me that Halloween where I cosplayed as Judge Anderson from the Judge Dredd comics, and one guy came like running at me from across the parking lot and was like, oh my god, are you Judge Anderson? Just some stranger on Halloween was just freaking the fuck out, and it was great.
It's nice. It's a nice feeling.
It's so good. Just to like
have
be recognized.
A person recognize your hard work. Yeah.
So that was my cool story about getting to meet her.
Do you follow her on any socials?
I do. She's not super active on social media. Jimmy's a bit more active. I do follow him, and as well as their printing company. They produce their own comics and stuff now too, so they actually have like their own comic label, which is called Paper Films.
I think you've mentioned them briefly before.
Yeah, they release a lot of good stuff. I would suggest checking it out. As I mentioned, Amanda Connor is truly showing just what a difference having diversity behind creative teams can do, especially with a character like Power Girl, who for years, essentially since her creation, has just been essentially a joke. Like, she's got big tits, she's got superpowers, and she's kind of Superman's cousin from another dimension. It's fine. And she took her and she made her into like this charming and witty and interesting character who was struggling with their identity and who they were and where they belonged, and she just gave her a story and an actual life, and you began to care about her. And when she got control of Harley Quinn, she gave this really interesting story of Harley Quinn finding herself away from the Joker and becoming strong in her own like friendships and in her own relationships and becoming her own person, and like just giving these like a real true reality to characters in a superhero world, which she just has done so well. She's also particularly talented at telling a story with her artwork, as I had mentioned, and she continues that through all of her stuff. Her Starfire series run is so funny and is so good, and I would suggest it to anybody who wants to read like maybe a contained Starfire story where you don't need to know a lot of other stuff. I would suggest checking out her Starfire run. But that's a really good example of where she showed off her kind of fun expressions, and like she can draw characters that are sexy but they can also still be silly and a little ridiculous and fun. Also, as I had mentioned earlier, she had drawn for Barbie in the 80s. And that was kind of her first beginning into regularly drawing. And she learned from that job about fashion. She learned that she liked designing clothing and doing kind of those things, because that was where she got to have her creativity while drawing.
Was in the clothes?
That. Yes,
okay.
Exactly. Then she eventually moved on to working on Vampirella in the 90s.
What?
Yeah, so she did a bunch of other things in between. And then she started working on Vampirella, which was like the polar opposite of Barbie. It's dark, it's like gritty. So she got to have a little bit more fun with the drawing style, but it was still restrictive in a way because she had to have it be dark and she had to cut out some of her comedic artistic opportunities.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, she got in trouble while working on Vampirella because there is a infamous image of the character looking miserable while sitting on a toilet with her like skimpy little string costume like around her ankles, and she's just got like her head in her hand. It's a very funny picture, but like I don't know how it got passed and how it got into print, but I guess it somehow got into print, and it's funny and it's hilarious and it's a great image of Vampirella. In her indie comic days, she really got to expand on her style and explore more of the rude and outside the box stuff. Her style is so iconic and dynamic, in my opinion. Like, I can look at something and tell it's like, that's Amanda Connor drawing that. I know immediately, and it's awesome. The positions and facial expressions are amazing and expressive, and she does not always favor the sexy pose, so it's not always like TNA, but it's always interesting. It's always dynamic, and it always applies to the situation. Because sometimes sexy applies to the situation, and sometimes it super doesn't.
Knowing when and when not to apply sexy is
Yes.
very important.
Yes. So, aside from the ones that I have already mentioned, Amanda Connor has also gotten to draw for, among others, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Deadpool, Black Cat, Wolverine, and many more. So she's gotten to, she's gotten to bounce around to a lot of different things and gotten to explore a lot of different things, which is very cool. Lastly, her work on Power Girl is really what got me into all things Amanda Connor. And when I do cover Power Girl, oh my god, strap in.
Okay.
It's gonna be a day.
Oh.
But I just love having an artist and a creator who I know that when I pick up something and her name is on the cover, whatever she's doing, whether she's writing it, whether she's drawing it, whatever, I know that that is going to be something that I am going to enjoy. And that, having that confidence in a creator is so nice. Because it's like, oh yeah, like if I'm ever looking for something new, I can be like, oh, like what projects has she had her hand in regards to paper films or DC or wherever she's working at the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so if I want something new, I can go and check that out. I can go look at this. I can go read this. And it's cool having somebody who you're just like, hey, I know that I'll like that person's stuff. It's like having a favorite director.
Yeah, or like a guarantee, right? Like you're like, oh, I'm guaranteed to enjoy this in some form. I'm very excited about it. Like, even if it's not going to be your next big favorite, you can still really enjoy things regardless. Yeah. I totally get what you mean.
Yeah.
I feel that way about Rick Riordan.
Yeah.
Rick Riordan, as some other people say. But I really like all of his work, so I totally understand what you mean. When you're like, yeah, this person is doing a new thing. Huzzah!
Huzzah! I believe
Huzzah.
It's Red Sonja. She's on right now.
Really? I remember those comics. At least, like, I remember seeing them in an old stack of comics that my dad and his brothers would collect. Whenever they would go camping, they would have, like, this big box of comics that they could read. And I remember seeing Red Sonja.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's started, I believe she's writing. So her and Jimmy are co-writing the new series. So when that comes out, I don't really buy singles anymore because it's easier for me to store trade paperbacks. But I'll definitely check it out when it comes out on a trade paperback, which I'm very excited about. See what she's done with Red Sonja. The infamous chainmail bikini superhero.
With red hair.
With red hair.
Yep, the infamous.
Yeah. When people joke about impractical armor,
I think of her too. Don't worry. Don't worry.
I mean, she kept the boob window on Power Girl, which I loved. So there are times when you got to keep those problematic, iconic outfits because they are just iconic as fuck, and it's not them without it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is why I love the Pro and Amanda Connor. What are you excited about right now, Fonda?
I am so glad you asked. So I'm not done this book by any means, but my husband and I, back in January of this year, 2021, decided that we wanted to try and do like a little book club just between the two of us. Like, we would both share a book and we'd read a chapter, and then when we were done, we'd talk about it.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's taking us a bit just because it's tax season. My husband, being an accountant, his schedule is like swamped all the time. So I knew come March we wouldn't be done it. I just finished chapter 5, so whenever he's done chapter 5, we'll get to read it. But it's called The Ballad of Black Tom, and it was written in 2016. It's a fantasy horror novella by Victor Laval, revisiting an H.P. Lovecraft story called The Horror at Red Hook. Mm-hmm. And it's from the viewpoint of a black man.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm really enjoying it so far. The reason I picked it was because I know my husband's really interested in trying to pick up more like H.P. Lovecraft stories that aren't super dense and like gonna fuck you up.
Yep.
And I wanted to pick up something that would be light to read, and it's like a very thin, like it has under 200 pages.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, I can totally would love to let you borrow it. It's very good so far. Again, I'm not done it.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely enjoying it. And
you can borrow the Pro, and I'll borrow that one.
yeah, okay, swapsies. I'd love that. But that's currently what I'm enjoying.
That's awesome. That sounds super cool.
It's nice. It's out of the genre of things I normally choose for myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a little out of left field for you there.
It is. Like, I love when other people tell me about horror fantasy things, because I'm like, cool, I don't have to read it, watch it, or necessarily listen to it. Thank you for telling me, because it sounds cool, and now I don't have to worry about getting like scared.
Yeah.
But I do like some creepy things. And I like how the way it's set up so far, it's not overly terrifying. I'm sure it'll pick up as things go on, as most things do. But it's nice to try something out of my normal comfort zone.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Well, dear listeners, you can find us wherever podcasts can be found. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. I know that from our analytics, a lot of our viewers use Spotify, which is awesome and fine, but we can't get reviews or rates off of Spotify. So it'd mean a lot if you could, like, try to leave us a review or rate on another platform such as iTunes. That would be really helpful so more people can find our podcast. You can also follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram at Wench Bench Pod. And if you want to reach out, you can send us an email at wenchbenchpod@gmail.com. All of the art for the Wench Bench was designed by the wonderful Tessa Joyce Riecken. You can find her on Twitter and Instagram at Werevile. And thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Or like just her. It's fine.
Perfect.
So it's fine.
It's okay. It's fine.
It's fine.